Gary Burgoff was an absolute delight. He brought that great charm to Radar. The teddy bear, the cuddliness, the naivete.
I still remember vividly the sensation of first stepping foot into the swamp. Amidst the roar of helicopters, I burst out laughing at the wicked pranks of Hawkeye and Trapper, only to fall silent seeing them standing over the operating table for 24 hours, their gloves stained deep red. At that moment I wondered, how can they laugh in the middle of this hell? But behind those satirical smiles lay a harsh reality. Did you know the actors had to wear heavy, warm coats in 104-degree heat? Those battlefield scars. They were advised by the cast members themselves who had actually served in the military. And if I told you that this show was once bitterly hated by its original author, that Trapper John was conceived from a scandalous incident, and that its final episode caused a horrific event in New York, you would understand, MASH is not just a sitcom. Today, we're setting aside the white coats to dissect 20 astonishing secrets spanning over half a century regarding the 40s 77th Unit. 20. The scandalous truth behind the name Trapper John. Do you remember Trapper John McIntyre? He always appeared with a smirk, his bathrobe loosely tied and a martini permanently in hand. He was the rebel against military discipline and the accomplice in every eccentric prank at the 4077th camp. But if you've ever wondered why a talented doctor would carry a name that sounds as wild as Trapper, the truth behind it is a story full of notoriety. According to Richard Hooker's original novel, this nickname was born from an embarrassing incident. John McIntyre was caught having a tryst in a train lavatory with a woman. When discovered, he defended himself by saying, "I didn't do anything wrong. She's a trap, and I'm just the trapper." From then on, the nickname Trapper stayed with him for life. Even later, when he moved on to the series Trapper John MD and became more composed and serious, the name Trapper remained a constant reminder of a rebellious youth. 19. Klinger only appeared in one episode, but the plan changed later. Do you still remember the image of a guy with sideburns, muscular arms, but wearing glamorous evening dresses, a feathered hat, and clacking high heels through the mud? That's Maxwell Klinger, perhaps the craziest character in television history. But initially, Klinger was not designed to become a comic cross-dresser. The inspiration for Klinger came from Lenny Bruce, the legendary comedian who once claimed he was discharged from the Navy because of his sexual orientation. However, contrary to all fears of negative reactions, the audience gave this character an unbelievably warm love. To keep Klinger around longer without hitting censorship barriers, the writers turned Klinger into a heterosexual man who cross-dressed in hopes of being discharged from the military for eccentric behaviour. But ironically, the more Klinger tried everything to get kicked out, the more he proved himself to be a diligent, talented, and indispensable member of the unit. Which version do you like more? A rebellious Klinger like the original concept, or the hilarious Klinger on screen? 6. 18. Henry. Blake had to die, but no one knew. Surely you still remember the death of Henry Blake, a commander who always wore a fishing hat covered in lures. It started with Henry receiving his discharge papers. But then, in the final moments, the character Radar entered the operating room in a daze, his voice trembling as he announced, Henry's plane had been shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. But did you know? When Wayne Rogers decided to leave, screenwriter Larry Gelbart stood at a crossroads. Let Henry Blake transfer safely back home, or do something no sitcom had ever dared to try. And Larry chose the second option. But the issue was, the entire film crew, from actors to post-production staff, had no idea. They filmed the scenes, even held a rap party, completely unaware of the death sentence for the colonel. Only Alda knew in advance. When the final scene was revealed, the entire set fell silent. The stunned expressions on their faces at that moment were not acting. That was real shock. The public reaction afterward was extremely intense. Thousands of angry letters flooded CBS. Why would a show dare to let a beloved character die like that? In reality, the producers wanted to send a message. In war, not everyone gets a happy ending. Even when you're holding your ticket home, death can still call your name at any moment. 17. Trapper John, the perfect counterweight to Hawkeye. If you followed the show from day one, you likely loved the duo of Hawkeye and Trapper John McIntyre. Drinking home-distilled gin together, breaking military rules together, and being talented surgeons who shared a mutual disdain for discipline. But there is an interesting fact few people notice. Trapper was not a sidekick for Hawkeye. He was the perfect counterweight, a mirror reflecting the exact madness of his best friend. While Hawkeye was the bachelor who worshipped freedom, Trapper was a man with a wife and 2 daughters. Behind the facade of a notorious playboy was a father and husband who carried a deep, constant homesickness. What about you? Do you prefer Hawkeye or Trapper John McIntyre? Let me know in the comments below. 16. The reason behind Trapper John's disappearance from the show. Unlike many characters who receive an emotional farewell, Trapper John, Wayne Rogers' version, left the show MASH in an incredibly cold fashion. He received his discharge orders while Hawkeye was away on leave. Hawkeye returned only to find an empty bed. But why did such a prominent character vanish so abruptly? According to my research, Wayne Rogers flatly refused to sign a long-term contract because he would not accept the morals clauses imposed by the studio. By choosing to be a freelance actor, he took on an enormous legal risk. The producers angrily filed a lawsuit against him for breach of contract. But in the end, Rogers won. What's truly admirable is that Rogers never used the scandal to polish his reputation. He always maintained respect for his co-stars, especially his friendship with Alda. However, he also firmly asserted, "I have no regrets." Some believe that beyond contract issues, there was another reason. As MASH grew famous, Alda gradually became the centre, while Trapper John was pushed to the sidelines. Consequently, he no longer wanted to stay in a show where he was merely someone else's shadow. 15. The writers had a mischievous revenge. I just found a very interesting behind-the-scenes anecdote about MASH. Have you ever wondered what happens when the star actors start complaining too much and make the writers hot-headed? After hearing too many grumbles about filming, the writers decided to give the stars a memorable experience. 2 episodes required the characters to pretend they were living in winter. The actors had to wear thick, heavy coats. Ironically, the filming schedule fell right during the peak hot sunny days in Malibu, with outdoor temperatures ranging from 32 degrees to 38 degrees. It was true torture. After that scorching experience, the complaints suddenly disappeared completely. The actors finally understood an implicit message. Don't challenge the people holding the pens, because they are the ones who decide whether you'll enjoy or suffer on screen. What do you think about this trick? Is it a smart move or a bit of an over-the-top abuse of power? Behind the creation of the Hawkeye character. The Hawkeye we love, with his dashing red robe, martini in hand and mouth constantly spouting sarcasm, is actually a creation by Alda himself. Alda built Hawkeye as a man full of contradictions. He is the best doctor, capable of saving the most critical casualties. On the other hand, he is a rebel against war by turning everything into a joke. Do you remember the moments when Hawkeye sat alone in the darkness of the swamp tent? That's when Alda showed us the price of humour. He didn't want Hawkeye to be just a clown. He wanted us to see a soul cracking under the weight of witnessing too much death. That very humour became the perfect mask to cover the wounds war inflicted. Alda proved that. Sometimes the loudest laughter comes from those who suffer the most. 13. The secret behind Gary Burgoff's left hand. If you're an observant MASH fan, there's a small but fascinating detail about the character Radar O'Reilly that you might have missed. Gary Burgoff's left hand almost never appears clearly in the frame. He often tucked it into a glove, hid it behind a clipboard, or simply shoved it deep into his pocket. Those actions were not random. It was Gary Burgoff's clever way of concealing a congenital birth defect in 3 fingers of his left hand. Throughout many years on set, he turned this concealment into a natural habit for the character, to the point that audiences hardly noticed anything unusual. But what I truly admire most is that despite the hand impairment, Gary was a real drummer. In the music playing scenes, he still produced professional and natural rhythms, erasing all barriers related to appearance. Have you ever noticed the detail of Gary's left hand while watching the show? Comment below. 12. Many actors once served in the United States military. When I first watched MASH, I increasingly felt something was a bit strange. It wasn't like any comedy I'd seen before. One second we were rolling with laughter over a quirky joke from Hawkeye and Trapper, but the next second, the helicopter roar sounded. Casualties poured in. The atmosphere suddenly became thick. That's when I realised this wasn't just acting. I started researching the cast. It turned out Alan Alda, Hawkeye Pierce, had served in the United States Army Reserve. The way Hawkeye looked at patients, at comrades, it was exactly like someone who had stood in the midst of war. Then Jamie Farr, Maxwell Klinger, the character who wore dresses to dodge the draft, was actually created by someone who had served in Japan and joined USO tours to Korea. And Wayne Rogers, Trapper John McIntyre, had joined the United States Navy. That explains why Trapper always maintained optimism and team spirit, no matter the circumstances. MASH didn't rely on cheap laughs. It was backed by the real experiences of people who had once worn the uniform. And that's exactly what makes every episode, even the light ones, leave a lasting echo long after the screen goes dark. What about you? Which moment in MASH do you remember most? 11. 77% of the US population stayed home to watch the final episode of MASH. I just rewatched the statistics about MASH, and truly, it's a historic milestone. On February 28, 1983, when the episode titled Goodbye, Farewell and Amen aired, up to 105.9 million people watched. That number equaled 77% of the US population at the time, meaning, out of every 4 people you met, 3 were following the characters of the 4077th. Its appeal was so tremendous that it set unprecedented records. For 40 years, it became the most watched program in American history. The viewership for MASH's finale even surpassed the Super Bowl that same year, something traditionally considered the specialty of American television. The heat turned ad slots into a battle. Brands had to pay up to $450,000 for just 30 seconds of airtime, 15 times higher than normal days and more expensive than ads in the football finals. This proves MASH wasn't just a show, but a cultural legacy with huge commercial value. 10. The show lasted longer than the actual War 9. The Korean War in reality only lasted a mere 3 years, 1950 to 1953. Yet the TV series MASH fought persistently for a full 11 seasons. That means the filmmakers spent time telling stories nearly 4 times longer than the actual duration of that war in real life. Why did they do that? Could it be that time on the Malibu set passed more slowly than in the real world? Actually, the reason is very simple. The show was hugely successful. The writers realized they had found a gold mine they couldn't bear to close. They discovered that audiences weren't just watching to find out when the war would end. They watched to see the cast of characters age alongside them year after year, follow the rivalries and relationships spanning decades, and enjoy the feeling that the 4077th Unit was a real family. And so, while history had long turned the page, on screen our doctors kept tirelessly performing surgeries as if peace was a concept that would never exist. the author openly despised the TV series. We often assume that everyone involved in its creation must be proud of the humanistic message the show conveys. But Dr. Richard Hornberger, the author of the original novel that created Hawkeye Pierce, harboured a deep contempt for the television series itself. In Hornberger's memory, his time serving at the 8055th Unit in Korea was filled with recollections of bravery, playful antics, and pure camaraderie. His book was a humorous lens on wartime life, but when it reached the small screen, the filmmakers turned it into an anti-war manifesto. He complained that the show had trampled on his military memories, turning real soldiers into politicized characters. For him, inserting peace messages into humorous situations was an insult. He once bluntly criticized, "I had no intention of delivering any message in the book at all. I don't agree with this meaningless anti-war stuff." 8. The 48-hour script and the historic kick in the head. Every legend has a strange beginning, and with MASH, it started with boredom. Can you believe it? When this project took shape, writer Larry Gelbart was in London, enjoying life far from the Hollywood spotlight because he was utterly exhausted with the film industry. He didn't even want to touch any script anymore. Yet, he received an invitation to write the pilot script for a new show called MASH. After some hesitation, Gelbart accepted and immediately plunged into a frenzy of creativity. Many sources recount that he stayed up almost non-stop to complete the pilot script in just 2 days. Perhaps that very prior boredom helped him write sharp, raw dialogue that was completely different from the old clichés. The well-deserved reward. With that masterpiece born in 48 hours, he received $25,000, an enormous sum, a massive paycheck at the time. 7. The secret behind the names of the characters in the show. Have you ever noticed the names of the patients? I used to think they were just random, but it turns out the MASH writers played a mischievous code game that only sharp-eyed fans would notice. In Season 6, 4 Marines were admitted. If you were a fan of the California Angels baseball team in 1977, you would recognize their names as the key players of that team. Then, in Season 7, the new patients bore the names of the stars of the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1978. Why these two California teams? To this day, the connection between war and baseball remains a mystery without an explanation. Was it the writers' way of paying tribute to their favorite teams, or a metaphor for team spirit? It didn't stop there. In the episode Goodbye Radar, Radar finally finds his own sweetheart. Her name is Patty Haven. The name sounds poetic, but in reality, it was the name of an ex-girlfriend of Ken Levine, one of the show's writers. Putting his ex's name into such an iconic episode, was it sweet revenge, or simply a way to preserve a memory? Only Levine knows the real answer. 6. The missing teddy bear that returned in an unexpected way. In a medical unit full of alcohol-addicted doctors, Radar O'Reilly's teddy bear wasn't just a prop. It was a symbol of the remaining childhood innocence amid the battlefield. But did you know the real-life fate of this teddy bear was even more dramatic? After the show wrapped, the legendary teddy bear suddenly vanished. No one, not even Gary Burgoff, knew where it went. The bear was lost for a solid 30 years, leaving a void in the hearts of fans. Just when it seemed this keepsake was forever lost in some warehouse, in 2005, a miracle happened. The teddy bear reappeared at an auction. A medical student decided to spend up to $11,500 to acquire it. What's truly admirable is that the student didn't buy it to collect. Right after winning the bid, he proactively contacted Gary Burgoff and offered to return the teddy bear to its rightful place. 5. The time capsule that was lost and found in surprising circumstances. In the penultimate episode titled As Time Goes By, the characters buried a time capsule together under the ground of the Fox Ranch, the filming location. It was an emotional ritual to preserve the spirit of the 4077th. But afterward, the very people who created it forgot about the capsule until a construction worker accidentally dug it up on the now-sold property. The worker contacted Alan Alda to ask what to do with this old box. But Alan Alda casually replied, "Just keep it." Alda later recounted that even the worker showed no excitement. He held the box with a rather normal expression, in stark contrast to the reverence of the fans. 4. The Fateful role swaps. What if Hawkeye wasn't Alan Alda? When looking back at the old footage, it's hard to imagine anyone else in Hawkeye Pierce's robe besides Alan Alda. But few know that initially, McLean Stevenson auditioned for the role of Hawkeye Pierce himself. Just try to imagine a Hawkeye with Stevenson's gentle face and demeanour. Fortunately, producers Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds recognised something different. They saw in Stevenson calmness, maturity, and a touch of charming absent-mindedness, the perfect qualities for Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake. This switch was so brilliantly successful that it earned Stevenson an Emmy in 1974. If Stevenson had played Hawkeye, we might have lost the edgy, rebellious, strongly defiant character that Alan Alda delivered. Another near miss was the role of Trapper John. The filmmakers once offered it to comedian Robert Klein. However, he said, "No, unlike many Hollywood regret stories, Robert Klein has always proudly affirmed, 'I don't regret that decision at all.'" The show's fake laughter. When it comes to 1970s sitcoms, the laugh track is an indispensable specialty.
Order.
Oh, do, Frank. We've never ignored one of those.
I'm a major, you're only...
However, for the creators of MASH, the question was painfully difficult. Is canned laughter still appropriate in a show full of gunfire? The creators believed the answer was no, but CBS Network thought otherwise. They feared that without a laugh track to guide, viewers wouldn't know when to laugh. A battle ensued and the result was a compromise. The laugh track could not be removed. Although they couldn't eliminate it entirely, the production team firmly set one rule: never insert any laughter into operating room scenes. Interestingly, as the show progressed into later seasons, the canned laughter became sparser and quieter. It gave way to more authentic stories, longer silences, allowing viewers to feel and empathise on their own. 2. A lot of A-list stars appeared in the show. There's a fun game that MASH fans still whisper about: star hunting. You'll be amazed to discover that this mobile medical unit was actually a gathering place for future A-list stars. Before becoming an Oscar-winning famous director, Ron Howard appeared at the 4077th as a young Marine, not yet old enough for duty. Patrick Swayze brought tears to viewers' eyes as a young soldier facing leukemia in the middle of the battlefield. And Leslie Nielsen, the later king of comedy in The Naked Gun, actually once played a stern colonel. The list goes on so long it would make any casting director jealous. From Lawrence Fishburne, star of The Matrix, Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, to veteran names like Rita Wilson, John Ritter, Shelley Long, and Blythe Danner. 1. The man behind the success of 30 Ways episodes. If Hawkeye Pierce is the face of MASH, then Alan Alda is the soul of the show. He personally took on the roles of writer and director for a total of 31 episodes, including the 2.5-hour finale. Did you know Alan Alda wrote his name into television history in a way no one had done before? He became the first person to win Emmy Awards in all 3 most prestigious categories for the same program. For Alda, MASH was not just a job. It was a creative workshop where he could weave humanistic ideas, concerns about war, and the human condition into every frame. Which fact in this list of secrets interests you the most? Do you like any other shows? Please share with us in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next interesting videos.